in about 3 minutes. Go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the November RIAC Learning Series. My name is Vanessa Brewer, and I'm the Regional Interagency Council Program Administrator, also known as RIAC Program Administrator. My co-host is Lee Taylor. She is the State Interagency Council Program Administrator, and we both work at the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. If you've not attended before, I'd like to take just a little bit of time to provide a snapshot of how and why the RIAC Learning Series was created. The development of the Learning Series was a response to evaluation input that we received from participants that attended a RIAC workshop last winter. There were several topics that were listed as needing more information to support the work of RIAC and system of care efforts. So all topics in the RIAC Learning Series are RIAC driven. These learning opportunities are offered on the first Friday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we try to keep them to an hour or an hour and a half. Sessions are currently planned through December, and a planning team is working on planning for January through June of 2022. Because we want to keep this a RIAC-driven learning opportunity, we are asking for your help with planning the 2022 RIAC Learning Series. A very brief 4-question RIAC Learning Series survey is going to be released to RIAC leaders soon. And when you receive it, we ask that you share it with your RIAC members, the guests that attend your RIACs, and your system of care partners so we can collect their input too. Our presentation today is titled The Ins and Outs of Making Your RIAC Work with Youth Engagement. And our speakers are Felicity Krueger. She is with the Kentucky Partnerships for Families and Children, also known as KPFC. And Stephanie Sikes-Jones. She is with the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. And before I turn it over to Felicity and Stephanie for them to introduce themselves, I just wanted to share a few netiquette housekeeping items. So if you haven't already, please mute your mics. This workshop is going to be recorded and posted on the RIAC webpage to use as a resource, and we'll put that link in the chat box. You can use the chat box for questions and or comments. Lee and I are both going to be monitoring that during the session. We also have some time carved out at the end for Q&A. Let's see here. Certificates of attendance are available by request. So if you need one of those, please email me if you'd like to have one, and I'll put my contact information in the chat box. So please join me in welcoming Felicity and Stephanie. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Vanessa. I really appreciate it. So I did have to turn my camera off. Surprise, I'm having internet issues. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. So if at any point during the presentation I start to get laggy, I'm going to rely on Felicity, Lee, and Vanessa to let me know. They can also text me as well. And then I just wanted to double check you can see the presentation, right? Okay, good. So welcome everybody. And like Vanessa already said, my name is Stephanie Sikes-Jones, and I work up at the Department for Behavioral Health. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the state level youth leadership coordinator for the Tailored Initiative, which is a grant all about improving services and supports for transition age youth. And I was hired based on my lived experience with behavioral health and foster care, as well as just some leadership experience in my earlier years. So I'm going to go ahead and let Felicity introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Felicity Krueger. I like to describe myself as one of those youth you guys work with. I'm 18. I have my lived experience with leadership and mental health, as well as somewhat in the foster care system. I work with lots of organizations, but KPFC is one of them. And I also work with Youth Move and Youth Move National and all the other things. I like to stay busy. So being involved with different organizations like this are my primary capacity of keeping me busy. And I'm 18. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, 'tis me.
Thank you, Felicity. And we're really excited to have Felicity working with us. She's not just a youth we work with. She is really making herself an expert, and she is an expert. So we're excited to have her. So just a few things that we're going to be talking about today. Felicity is going to talk to us a little bit about adultism, and what adultism is, what it looks like, how to respond when it happens at your RIAC. We could do a whole presentation on adultism, so we're going to probably hit the high points for this, but if you all want more information, you always can set up consultation with us. We're going to discover new methods and uses for Hart's ladder of youth engagement and quick tips to get to the upper steps. If you've ever attended any youth presentation, you've probably heard of Hart's ladder, so we're going to be covering that today. And then we're going to talk about tokenism, manipulation, and decoration, and quick tips on how to avoid these while engaging with youth on RIACS. All right, Felicity.
Okay, so our first one, adultism, as Stephanie said. So we can always look at the meaning that you can get from Webster's dictionary: prejudice or discrimination against young people as a group. So we need to learn about adultism just so that we can stop it, basically. You can't stop something if you don't have any idea of what it is. Adultism include things like we see in racism, sexism, and homophobia. This one is just more normalized than most of these other isms. It's really something that can be seen as part of society. Microaggressions towards young people are really, really common. I mean, at one point in time in all of our lives, we've probably heard something along the lines of children are seen, not heard, or we've had adults tell us to go sit in the corner and be quiet. I know I have, and especially in a state like Kentucky, I'm sure a lot of us have. It's sort of very normalized for adults to have, I'm going to use the word, sort of power over children. And they do have some power, but not all of it. When they're small, you have the ability to tell kids, okay, this is going to keep you, could get you hurt, so let's not do it. But as they get older, you guys gotta have a little bit of freedom with your youth, especially if they're youth that you're working with. Statements perpetuate the idea of young people not being allowed to have a voice and not being heard, because the adults are speaking, also assuming that we are too young, to have a say on stuff that directly involves us. All of us have either experienced adultism or contributed to it at one point in time. And that's a learning experience, as everything is, just sort of reevaluating what we say to young people. I'm a young person, but I can think of times, especially this summer when I was working with youth at a camp, of times where I was like, maybe I shouldn't have told that kid to go sit in the corner and be quiet for 10 minutes. And that's next slide. So examples of adultism. Adultism can look like not allowing young people on boards or committees about them because of age. I have had experience with that one. There was multiple times where I've tried to be involved in groups and it was 18 plus and I was 16 and like, but this is stuff that is involving kids within a school system. Shouldn't we allow school age kids to be here? Withholding information about youth from them, using youth as tokens or accessories, which we will get more in depth in pretty soon, demanding respect from youth while not respecting them. I have met enough adults that do that in this rural Kentucky town. It's very interesting. So we gotta sort of stop that, because I think it's all about mutual respect. I respect you, you respect me. And that's goes along with every human being in this entire planet. Deeming problems youth face as insignificant. We saw this pretty prominently during the pandemic because a lot of youth were upset with school being canceled, and youth included would tell all of these youth that that's not a big deal, people are dying right now. Well, it's something that is a big deal to me right now. It's facing me right now. And then making decisions about youth without youth. As Youth Move National uses, nothing about us without us. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Next slide. Consequences of adultism. So I'm sure that all of you have been in a big group of people at one point in time and tried to talk, but a lot of people keep talking over you. How did that make you feel? Because I know when I was in groups like that, it made me feel very unheard and very, very like I didn't want to speak again because nobody's going to listen to me. Adultism can make young people feel completely unheard, which can cause them to shut down, decrease in confidence, and not want to stand up to them for themselves. When youth cannot tell you what is going wrong, how will you know? That's something that I thought was clever. You won't, because you don't know what's going on with them because they're not telling you directly. You know what faced you as a youth when you were a youth, but times change and times can change just in a year. A kid that when I was 5, I didn't have the same things that 5-year-olds now are being faced with. The world changing constantly. Struggles youth had are more complicated and ever growing. Social media, different social statuses, and politics can often attribute to the different things going on in the world. We aren't saying it's harder, it's just different, and youth know what's best for them. Next slide. Great ways to combat adultism. Get to know youth, ask them what they think helps them. Give them opportunities to share thoughts and opinions, ask them directly. Hey youth, what are your thoughts on this? Also, with that one, I give them room to also know if they don't want to say anything, don't force them to say anything, just offer them the opportunity to. Think about wording, perceived views, maybe what you always heard growing up is adultism. When you were young, how did someone saying that to you make you feel? Allow room for growth. Don't be afraid to be corrected, and don't be afraid to correct adults or other people. Learning is always possible. That's always a big life lesson that I especially learned this past year. And be accommodating. Give youth ways to stay in the loop, like using apps and social media. And with that one, don't be afraid for yourself to learn about different types of social media. I know that I'm learning about Slack, and it can be a hard app, but you gotta keep working on it. And if it helps the youth stay in the loop, it might also help you as well. It just might be a learning curve. And lastly, provide support, understanding, and freedom to explore leadership journeys. I know that I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a lot of adults in my life give me opportunities to be involved and learn about all these types of things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Felicity. Again, we could do a whole workshop on adultism, but we didn't want that to be our only focus today. So feel free to hit us up for consultation. Felicity and me both took the same class at the same time and learned about adultism. So we'd be happy to both talk to you more about it. So Hart's Ladder, and if you were registered yesterday, then I know Vanessa and Lee sent this out to you all so that you could have a copy of this, like the image. This is the Hart's Ladder that we use most commonly here in Kentucky because it has definitions and examples on it. So just a quick kind of side note about Hart's Ladder. Oftentimes when people look at the ladder, they think literally about the ladder. Like, okay, I should start at the bottom and work my way up to the top. That is not how we use Hart's Ladder. The bottom rungs here, if you can tell, are non-participation. So you actually don't want to start with these. And this is tokenism, decoration, and manipulation. And after we talk about Hart's Ladder, we'll get into those. But what I wanted to talk to you all really quick about is the top rungs, and that is actual youth involvement. And it can look very different. There is a best recommendation, and that's the top rung, but it depends on what project you're working on, and that's how the ladder should really be applied, is per project. I think for a long time we've said we want RIACS to be overall at the top, and unfortunately our systems are just not designed to work that way. So it really comes down to look at each of the projects on your plans and really think about where do we want youth voice to fall on the ladder. So the first one is young people are assigned to things, but still informed about what's happening. And this is where adults decide on the project, young people volunteer for it, and young people understand the project and adults respect their views, but they don't really have a lot of input. Next one is young people are consulted and informed, where adults design and facilitate the project. The young people's opinions are given weight in decision making, but again, young people really aren't equal partners there. Adult initiated and shared decisions with young people is the next rung. Adults have the initial idea, which is often what we see happen. And then young people are kind of invited and involved after the idea is, y'all are trying to plan to make the idea happen. And that's when they're involved in making decisions and planning and implementing the project. The next rung is what we call true youth driven. And this is where young people lead and initiate the action. Young people have the initial idea and decide how the project is going to be carried out. Adults are available basically for support. But the top rung is where young people have the ideas, set up the project, and initiate inviting adults to join them in making decisions throughout the project. They are equal partners. Another way to look at this, if it will let me go to the next slide, is the typology of youth participation, or the type pyramid. And Youth Move National actually just started using this as well. But this is, to put simply, it just shows how maximized empowerment for both parties really comes from shared control and that pluralistic way of engaging youth, that youth have voice, and youth and adults share that control. So what is tokenism, manipulation, and decoration? These are just like the definitions for them, but we're going to give examples that put it more into context. So tokenism, young people are given limited voice, choice, in what they can say. If you have heard of tokenism before with other isms, then you know that it's usually one person at the table that's supposed to represent a whole population, but it is a bit deeper than that. Manipulation, young people take part of an event in a very limited capacity and have no role in decision making. And then decoration, adults have complete authority and abuse their power. They use youth's ideas and voices as their own. So just some examples. So tokenism, a young person be asked by the adults to be on a panel to represent youth, but the young person isn't given any opportunity to consult with peers or understand their role. So really that happens, that we're asking young people to come to the table to sit on the RIAC, but we're also not supporting them and connecting with the young people in the community to really represent that collective voice. So it's thinking about ways that we can combat that. Manipulation, a group of young people are given a script by adults, youth problems to present to adults attending a youth conference. So I really think about this because this did happen a lot in my personal leadership journey, where I would be a part of a group of young people, and then we were about to speak on a panel or something like that, or they really wanted us to represent their idea of what our story meant. So we would get a lot of coaching. Coaching is good, but making sure that like the coaching is in a way that you're not losing the authenticity of the young person's voice and feelings and their perspective, right? Manipulation often happens when you're allowed to share your story or use that lived experience in a way that supports whatever ideas the adults have in the room. But the second you use that lived experience to kind of disagree with the perspective of the adults in the room, then it's kind of frowned upon. And then decoration, a publication uses young people's cartoons. However, the publication is written by adults. This also happens very frequently, where we'll ask a young person to come to the table just to kind of check off a box, but we're not really actively engaging them. And they're not having these like a big part of how we're moving our initiatives forward. They're just kind of there because we know that we need to have a youth at the table, but we don't really know how to use them. And that often results in decoration. So that causes some pretty big consequences. Oftentimes that results in little to no youth engagement. And that's not just around, like, let's take the RIACS as an example. That's not just around the RIACS. That is with whatever project your RIAC is working on. If you are possibly tokenizing, manipulating, or using your youth as decoration completely unintentionally, you may see that those projects really don't get a lot of youth feedback and youth buy-in. Your youth participation may weaken over time. And what that looks like is you may have a young person come to the table and be your RIAC youth rep maybe once or twice, but then they disengage and fall off. And that sometimes is an indicator that tokenism, manipulation, or decoration is happening. You'll stay at the bottom of the ladder. These weren't my slides, these are Jesse's, so I wish I could elaborate more on that, but I think that's pretty matter of fact. Those are the non-participatory parts of the Hart's ladder, so you don't want to be there. So you want to get out of doing that as fast as possible. And then this is a big one, the effects on youth and young adults' mental health. In a class that me and Jesse Dillow took, I wish he could be with us today, but he's not with us. We learned about the effects of tokenism, manipulation, and decoration on youth and young adults' mental health in a way that we had never really thought about it before. Those experiences actually can be quite traumatic. And before anybody had put that traumatic word to my own experiences, I never really thought of it that way. But what does trauma do to your body? You know what I mean? Like, it causes you to shut down, you go into fight, flight, or freeze. Like, there's a lot of reactions that can come from feeling the effects of tokenism and adultism on you. And that can cause a negative experience for young people. For us, what that means is young people are really hesitant to re-engage. But for the young person themselves, that could really result in a lot of poor outcomes long-term for them. So we do want to avoid these because they can be traumatic. And that seems a little like big to say, but the truth is it is traumatic. I've been through it myself, and I'm actually having to work through some of it now that I am recognizing it as trauma. So a big important thing to note. So we do want to avoid these. And then ultimately you'll have less programmatic growth if you're tokenizing, manipulating, or using your youth as decoration. So what are some things we can do to combat tokenism, manipulation, and decoration? The first is starting with having a clear understanding, not only you as a council, but with your young person present, that they have a clear understanding too of why are young people even involved in the first place. Second, is really understanding why youth would even want to be involved. So there's a difference of why are we being asked, more than it's just, in statute that we have to have these youth at the table, but like what values is going to bring to us. And then really, what value is the young person going to get out of it? What would make them want to be involved? And then making sure that you have clear outcomes and they're put in very simple language for young people to understand what's wanted with you involving them on the project. What are your outcomes? What are you hoping to get to by involving youth voice? Having a clear understanding on what level of participation you want from. So going back to that Hart's ladder and saying, okay, what level on this ladder are we going to be on with youth around the table, and making sure not only your group understands that, but also the young person understands that so they know what to expect. What benefits will youth get from being involved in the program? What risks, this is also a big one, will youth be at with being involved in your program? Are there risks? And it's easy to say, oh no, we're just coming to ask them to share their voice, but that actually takes a level of vulnerability. And it's possible that not every partner around the table is going to treat them with respect. They may be faced with adultism. So things like that are risks. And then you have to ask yourself, how am I going to mitigate those risks for my young people? What safeguards am I going to put in place? You're going to want to analyze your readiness, which I know is really hard, especially if you're a RIAC and you haven't had a youth chair in a long time. You're going to still want to take that time to analyze your readiness and get ready, take the steps to prepare for youth involvement. And then ultimately, what's going to really make the difference is proper support. So talking about proper support is really important. We've got what we decided to call positive youth engagement. And it's the process in which youth feel thoroughly engaged, supported, and involved in a way that creates the optimal outcome for both the youth and the projects and tasks in which they are involved. So what are some examples? A big one that we push for with Tailored and with any of the youth engagement things that we do as youth coordinators is supporting youth before, during, and after the event. There's buckets of support and how you support. So for example, when we decided to partner with Felicity on this, we had prep meetings before, like months before. When did we start this, Felicity? Like
August. No, before
Yeah.
August, May.
Yeah, like we had so many prep meetings just for this 1 hour presentation, because that before support is like really important. I'm lucky in the fact that Felicity is just like an expert, so like she doesn't require all that, but we still do it just for the sake of it. And then during, me and Felicity could text each other if something comes up. And then after, me and Felicity and Jesse will get together, we'll do a debrief. And make sure, that everything went well. How could we make it better? Use that opportunity to really think about how we can grow as a supportive team, and as a team working together. Now, if this is, if we're thinking about this in the context of RIAC, it's literally taking that hour, 30 minutes to an hour before every meeting and having a support person meet with your young person, the same support person, to go over the agenda, what's going to be discussed, what were you thinking you had, like feedback wise for this or that, and brainstorming ideas, and okay, how can I support you during the event to make sure that your ideas are heard? And then during the event, it's having that text message going, or literally sitting next to them so you can like write notes to each other, whatever it takes. And then after debriefing, because you're going to come back to another RIAC next month and you want to always improve that youth voice.
Also quickly, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
If you have more than one supports, I'd also try to make it so like if you have like a guy and a girl, try to make it so that the youth feels more comfortable, because I know I would rather have support people that are closer to like my general, I don't know how to word that, but like I would rather have a woman working with me. It's just how we would feel comfortable. And so I'd also ask your youth, who would you feel comfortable with, this person or this person, if that's possible?
Yeah. And I think that's a huge deal, is having that option of who best, because it's not cookie cutter. You bring up a really good point, Felicity. It's not cookie cutter. For different young people, they're going to connect with different people on your team. So it's just important to like think about that and think about how people kind of groove together, jive together personality wise. Because the worst thing that could happen is to have somebody connected with a support person where they don't jive with them, if that makes sense, because then the support's going to fail. So thank you, Felicity. Another one is supplying materials and information that are youth friendly and easy to understand. So with RIACS, I know everybody has like those agendas that happen ahead of time. And it's really, you don't have to make a completely different agenda. It's really taking that agenda and having a conversation, right? Or if you're trying to recruit, it's making sure that the information that you put on a flyer, a one pager, it needs to be one page, doesn't need to be huge, about what the RIAC's about, what you're looking for, needs to be like engaging, have you friendly pictures, things like that. And then connecting with youth on a personal level to understand their interests and motivations. Not only why are they involved with RIAC and what do they hope to achieve there, but what are some ways that they have fun in their free time? Because young people, like, if you think about it professionally, when we're around the table, we're in the office, like I'll hop by Lee's cubicle and we'll talk about like getting our hair done. Me and Lee, we were literally just talking about this before we hopped on the call. We get our hair done at the same shop. So, you know, those are things that fill us up. When we're working with young people, we want to know what are the things they fill up with. So I have another youth leader that I work with that she's got kids. So I ask her a lot about her kids. I ask her a lot about, you know, where she gets her clothes, things like that. I've heard other youth coordinators talk about, like, I literally watch this anime show because I know this youth leader I work with loves the show, so that we can text on a weekly basis about what's happening on the show. And it's taking 20 minutes to watch an episode to literally be able to connect with your young person. So it's understanding what motivates them outside of just the professional work and connecting with them on more of that personal level is hugely engaging. And then incorporating engagement into meetings. I didn't know how else to say this in like a short and sweet way, but that's things like icebreakers. That's things that are more fun and lighthearted. And also that's things that are more concrete, like stopping after every topic if you have not heard from your young person yet, to make sure that you're asking them if they have feedback. And when they do have feedback, discussing it thoroughly. Nothing hurts worse as a young person than being asked for your feedback. You say what you know, your opinion about it, and they go, oh, okay. Nothing is discussed. And then we move on to the next topic. It feels like that checking the box. I'm a token here, right? So it's really not only providing that opportunity for youth to speak, but also discussing their feedback as a group. And really having a conversation that results in what they're talking about. And making sure youth have an opportunity each meeting for their voice, as well as a part of the action plans. That's the other piece too, is the action plans, that they're not just saying what should go on the action plan, but they're actually saying, I could do this part, no matter how small or big. I could actually do this part. I may need support. So an example of that would be, and this is a big example, but it's the example that comes to mind. Since I work for a grant, we're currently in continuation applications. And me and the principal investigator on my grant and the project director met yesterday, and they're working so hard on this continuation application. And I was like, so I don't really know much about continuation applications. I don't really know how to do it, but I might have some ideas. So they included me on the form. And today, after I get off this call, I'm going to look and I'm going to go through and I'm going to put some bullet points of ideas I have about some activities we've done over the past couple of years that I think that they should cover, right? So it is pretty small that I'm doing that, but it is a way to get me engaged in the process. So everything has consequences, good or bad. So again, weirdly, because consequences of positive youth engagement sounds bad, but no, these are good. So you're going to see more sustainability with your youth position if you are able to engage your young people in a good way. The efforts that you're making as part of your action plan on RIAC are going to be more successful because you're going to get more buy-in from youth and families in the community. It's going to result in some massive growth for your RIAC, like big time. And then ultimately it'll help your youth leader grow as an individual, which is really, really important. And then there's more, like there's so much more that can come from really engaging young people in a positive way that we can't even capture because it can just go a million places. So just some quick tips. It's, again, getting to know your young leader more than just, you know, in the professional realm, like really what personally drives you. Tell me a bit about your life, and don't feel afraid to share some of that about yourself. Keep contact with them weekly, not just when the meetings are coming up. Actually, like check in with them every now and then. Make it a point to just reach out and be like, hey, I was thinking about you today. What's going on with you in your life, in your anime show, or whatever interests them. Help them reach their own goals, even if that doesn't align with exactly what's going on in RIAC. If they have the goal to like go to college or something like that, then like think of ways that you can help them to reach their own goals, because then they're going to be invested and want to give back to you. and then use the guidebook. So let me see, I shared this earlier or copied this earlier, so I want to make sure everybody uses it. I just posted the link in chat, but I am going to stop my screen share so that I can open up the guidebook. Can you all see that? Okay. So this is something that Tailored worked in partnership with a lot of people in Kentucky Partners for Youth in Transition to create about supporting young people on committees. And this was specifically designed for SEAC and RIAC. It's had a bunch of different iterations of it. So this is the most recent one. It was designed, you unfortunately cannot print this. That's the frustration here, but we did want to put it in a digital format to kind of keep up with the times. So
you can download it into a PDF. I just did it.
Oh, you can?
Yep. That little arrow right next to that linky thing. It's in between the linky thing and then that speaker. It has like an arrow that points down. If you click that, it downloads it to a PDF, and then from there you can save it and then print it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Michelle.
No problem.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I should like send you a Starbucks gift card or something. If I had one, I would totally send you one. That is huge. Okay, you can print it. Thank you so much, Michelle. You have solved like a year-old problem.
No problem.
Anyway, so it's got like a lot of information about like how exactly from start to finish that you should really look at youth engagement. And you should really start supporting youth. So it's 17 pages long. There's a lot of information. We didn't want to cover it today again because we're just trying to keep it under the hour. But really, really great